Hi friends, this is Heidi from Create Joy Gifts. Today I'm going to show you my latest journal that I made using a vintage quilt top and pages from a quilting books and images I found online and all kinds of goodies. So I'm going to show you this journal that I made, and then at the end I also will show you the kits that I made to make a similar journal like this using the fabrics that I have, the vintage quilt tops that I have, and other pieces that I had enough of so I could put together a few kits in case you would like to make one yourself. Everything, including this journal, will be available in my Etsy shop later today. So I love quilts, and I have a soft spot for quilters because my mother is a quilter, and I have many quilts made by her, and she does beautiful work. So when I put this together, I was just thinking of her, which was definitely special. So, okay, so first let me just show you, I scored this vintage quilt top, so it's an unfinished quilt at an estate sale, and it is awesome. I just love all of the colors and the miscellaneous fabrics. It's really beautiful. And so I've cut off some pieces to make the cover of this. I also had this unfinished, I think quilt top, though I think this was gonna be a like a tabletop kind of thing, and so I used pieces of this as well. And then I'll show you later. I have a third vintage quilt that was finished. That is similar to this one that I've used as the tablecloth here. It is definitely very old, and it was pretty ratty, like, you know, ragged, well loved. And so I'd cut that up, and I've used it for many different projects. So there's pieces of that in here as well, and I'll show you when we get to it. So this, I put a book plate on here. We've got some metal corners. This is actually a pin, which is interesting, right? Like a pair of vintage scissors as a pin. I had that, so I thought that looked good. Then I made a charm, a detachable tassel. I used vintage wooden thread, and I had some charms, and I used the jump ring brad. Has 3 signatures, and this is a soft cover. Has a lace tie closure. All right, let's go ahead in. Okay, so this is some of that fabric, the quilting, the really old quilt that I was talking about. I made a pocket in the front out of that, and a pocket in the back out of it. I used pages from 3 different quilting books. I'll show you. There's the Better Homes and Gardens applique book, this patchwork and applique book, which I've used quite a few pages from this, but this is one of my favorites, just because I like the paper. But it had, I think I pulled a lot of my favorites out and used them in the kits and stuff. But it has a lot of really groovy illustrations, you know, like actual illustrations, and so that is fun. And then this is one of my other favorite books, the Patchwork Quilt Design and Coloring book. So this is so cool. I've used this quite a bit too. So each kit has pages from there. And then I also used, you can see here, a picture I found, I scoured the internet for pictures and artwork of quilters. And so what I've included with the kit is the link to my Pinterest board that I put together with all of these images. And I'll put the link to my Pinterest board down below because anybody can go to that and check it out. I didn't include printouts of the pictures in the kits because honestly I didn't do my due diligence on copyright, and I didn't feel comfortable, I don't feel comfortable printing and selling that. So if you use the images, it's on you. Okay, so but they are some really cool both illustrations and photographs. So you'll see those throughout. And then with the kit as well is printouts of and I'll show you later, but I have quotes and other things. But in this, we'll just go through this for now. So in this front quote I picked to kind of set the scene for the book. It says, "After all, a woman didn't leave much behind in the world to show she'd been there. Even the children she bore and raised got their father's name. But her quilts, now that was something she could pass on." And that is by Sandra Dallas. Okay, so here's one of the images that I printed out from the internet, and I distressed the edge. And then what you'll see throughout, I scored these vintage weekly time cards, which are in this luscious, thick, satiny feeling cardstock. And so I went ahead and I left it so that this side shows still on all the cards. But then I used some of the other quilts that I had and sewed this on. I decided not to embellish these anymore in this journal, just because I just couldn't bear covering up the quilt itself. But whoever gets this can certainly embellish it more if they choose, or they can use it exactly as is. And then on the back side of the cover here, so it's a page from the one of the quilting books. And this, I use definitions from a glossary, definitions from a glossary from one of the books throughout as well, so you'll just see them randomly. This one I really like. I'm not going to read all of the definitions because I'll take forever, but this particular one is nice. Masterpiece quilt. Traditionally a very fine patchwork quilt made by an accomplished needlewoman and generally reserved for the guest room. And here's a pocket, and here's the quote. I will read the quotes. "The eldest one said that the laughter and tears are sewn right into the quilt, part and parcel, stitch by stitch. Emotions, experiences, heartbreak, mourning, pain, and regret stitched into the cloth, along with happiness, satisfaction, cheer, comfort, and love. The finished quilts were a living thing, a reflection of the spirits of its creators." And unfortunately, I cut off who this quote is by. It's in my the printouts that I included in the kits. So I used coffee dyed graph paper throughout, and I put washi tape on the edges on some of the pages. Here's a tab using one of the old vintage quilt I was talking about. And then these are some of the groovy illustrations from that particular book that I really liked. Another illustration, definition, and a card. This is a page from one of the books. Washi pocket I made with the quilted card. It will go faster after I get through the first signature because the signatures are pretty much all the same. And there is my cutie pie. Go. Washi book page. I did some punching using my button punch. Washi I used some vintage sewing notion cards, which are also included in the kit. Paper lace doily, which I included in the kit. At the end, I will go through the whole kit too, so you can see. Another image of an African American woman quilting. I tried to, if I found women across different cultures and races, I tried to include that in here because quilting is definitely done by people all over the world. And this is just a little fold-out, some tags. Some of the washi. And there's another picture. And another card. Vintage notion tuck spot. Oh, I love this. This is a stamp that I have. This is the stamp. They who are wild, wacky women. They are women of substance, women of their own making, with the perfect blend of candor and common sense. They understand the value of friendship, love, and laughter. They are smart, empowered, and enlightened, with the wisdom and legacy of the women who have come before them. With a spirit that soars free, they rejoice in this great sisterhood called women. I love this stamp. So I stamped on some fabric, and then I did a little fabric collage and with the quilt pieces and some art yarn to make a pocket. And in the kit, I included one of these stamped, one of these pieces, the fabric with the stamp on it. See, this is more of that illustration from that book. If I find another one of those, because I really like that a lot. Perhaps thee will best understand what Abigail is like if I tell thee that when she quilts, she prefers to stitch in the ditch, hiding her poor stitches in the seams between the blocks. Tracy Chevalier, The Last Runaway. I love this. This is an African American woman with her daughter. I've left behind so many unfinished quilts in my life, beautiful pieces of dreams and intentions never fully assembled. K. Martin Beckner, A Million Doorways. Tuck spot. Another pocket. I used some of that extra thread you get sometimes with sweaters and stuff as a tuck spot. This is also a tuck spot. And then this is a pocket. And here's another vintage photograph, printout though, and another tag. Another fold down, and some more of those groovy illustrations from that book. I did not stick anything in here, but you can. It's a little pocket there and a tuck spot with the tag. Another printed photograph. Another fabric pocket. Tuck spot with more of the illustrations. It's a beautiful one. Another pocket. I didn't stick anything in here, but you can. More of the illustrations. And then I pulled the needles out of this, but this is a vintage needle pack. And I actually happen to have 4 of these. So I put one of each of these, one in each of the kits. So I just left that as is and stuck it in there. There's another photo. Oh, there's a little pocket there too. And zip up. Pocket. This I sewed all the way around. Another pocket. You can stick something in. Tuck spot. Pocket. Quilts need air and sunlight every week to keep them fresh and a long soak in the summer. Dorothy Adamak, Carry Me Home. This is a Native American woman working on a quilt. And then there's some extra photos and some bits and pieces I punched out from quilting books. There you go. There you go. There is the journal. It's actually, it's really fat because of all of the tags that I put in. If you take all the tags out, it's not quite as fat. But I have to say, this is one of my favorite journals that I've made. I really love this one. If I didn't have so many of my own already that I use, I would be tempted to keep this, but I have too many of my own. All right, so I'm only gonna go through one kit because they're basically all the same. What will change is the like color of the thread and the book pages, like what's actually on the book pages. Okay, so in every kit, I have a book plate, vintage thread on a wooden bobbin, on a wooden, whatever you call it, spool there. 4 bronze book corners, a bronze chain, which, here's the trick to this. If you take off the last jump ring, then you can feed the chain through and then put the jump ring back on the end, and then it becomes a jump ring that you can put like beads and other charms on. So that's how I did that. And then one of the small jump ring brads for the spine. So all of that. We've got the cutout of this Wacky Women stamp. You get 2, yeah, like snap. One will be snaps, and one will be the hook and eye which make great tuck spots. And then one of these, which I did not take the needles out. So they still have them in here, so you can take them out or not. And then what I didn't use in my book, but I found them afterwards when I was putting together the kits, and I thought, oh, these are great. Are little envelopes with one, with the cards that go inside, so you can embellish those too. I thought those were cute, so I put 3 in. And then each kit has, should be a yard of each of these. So this is a nice flat lace that makes a good tabs, or if you wanted to cut it in half and make it thinner and then use it for lace closure, you could do that. And then this is a thicker one, a wider, and it's also 1 yard, and it's blue, and also these are the same in each of them. But I wanted to show you what I did in this book is I used the wide blue lace on the spine to cover the spine. So you can use it for that or whatever. But I had plenty, so I was able to include it in these kits. And then I included 2 of these vintage time cards, which I used a ton of these in my book. And then these are not so vintage. These aren't that old. And I included 2 of these as well. I didn't use those in my book, but I had a ton of them, so I thought I'd throw them in. And then I included 3 of these square paper lace doilies, which I did use in the book. And I included some coffee dyed paper. Let's see, I forgot how much I included. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I included 6 pieces of coffee dyed paper. So this isn't enough to do the journal like I did, because I used like 10 sheets of coffee dyed paper per signature, but I had extras so I thought I would throw them in these kits for you. You'll have to supplement if you choose to use these. Okay, and then I'll go to that in a minute. And then I included 2 pages from the Patchwork Quilt Design and Coloring book. I included 2 pages from the Patchwork and Applique book, and 1 of these folded in half, a big page, and I didn't show this book. But this was the paper that I used to make the pockets, the page for the pockets in each signature. So you have 1 that you can either do that with, or you can do whatever you want, but that's what I used that paper for. And then 2 pages from this book. Look at that one. Obviously, it will just be this one kit that has this particular image, but I love that, and that's precious too. Okay, then let's go on to the fabric. So this is enough to do the cover, the outside cover, if you did it this size. Now this journal is like 5 3/4, the front cover here, by 8 3/4, with a 1.5 inch spine. So I've cut this so that it is big enough for you to do this a cover this same way, the same dimensions. And then there should be enough of this to do, at least 3 tags covered on one side with this. And then this is some of that really old quilt. You can see, I mean, this was really old. But it's very soft, and it's fun to layer up because it's at this point it's pretty thin. So I gave like one piece that has at least this size, with the actual quilt squares, and then I included this as extra in this particular cut. It's just the white, but it does have the hand quilting, which is fun to cut up and layer up. And then each kit has a piece of this, which is from the same quilt. And again, this is an old quilt, and it was hand quilted. So if you can see that, and these are good for cutting up and making tabs. So those are the quilt pieces that you get. And then there's some printouts. So I happen to use the glossary, a different glossary than what I've included in this. I used the glossary from probably this book. I think I took it out of this one. Yeah, I ended up cutting up the glossary from this book and using it in that book. But online, I found another free page with quilting definitions and glossaries. So I included 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages of quilting definitions that you can cut up and include in your embellishing if you like. And I used a typewriter font. Then these are the quotes. There's actually more quotes on the sheet than what I used in the book. So I've included the quotes. Here is the link to where you can find my Pinterest board with all of the images I used. And actually here it's pinterest.com/createjoygifts/quilters. And then I just did some notes on how I constructed this to give you, an idea of if you wanted to make one very similar to how I made it. Then I gave you some tips and stuff and my contact information in case you have questions. So like I said, I have 3 of these. Oh my goodness, my cat is lying on the other chair. Of these kits, and they're all the same construction. And they will be available in my Etsy shop later today. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day. Bye.